Ghanaians have an abiding faith in the rule of law, as long as they can pick and choose which aspects of any law must apply to them. We've not learned the lesson that even Moses' tablets have not been able to guarantee the triumph of good over evil, and that it is the wholesome application of law and not its good intent that delivers a just and ordered society. Our consummate belief and wishful thinking that we can fast-track personal gain without breaking sweat is the root cause of our enthusiastic preference for working outside the law. More often than not, it is only after laws have been engulfed by chaos and disorder do we realize that we did not pillar them on the social, cultural, and economic realities of the people. Good evening and welcome to Tarzan's Take. This week saw President John Mahama announce yet another ministerial committee to deal with the worsening nuance of Galamsey. Just yesterday, it was reported that 3 different bodies are claiming the right to redevelop the devastated ruins of the Kantamanto market. These are but the latest examples of a country where the tale of the abysmal failure to implement wags the dog of the laws that we pass. The questions for us to ponder on tonight are: why are our laws disregarded with impunity and total contempt by just about everybody, the makers and the targets? Are our laws being made to serve the public good of the majority or the narrow interest of the lawmakers and implementers? What is it that we always resort to bureaucratic obfuscation to restore order to breaches of our law, instead of just applying the many laws already on the books? And lastly, how do we ensure that the laws that we make for ourselves stand a good chance of being obeyed by reflecting the realities of the Ghanaian condition within the global notions of rights, freedoms, and responsibilities? Joining me tonight to discuss these issues are Mr. Nat Nunu Amartey-Fio, a distinguished former mayor of the capital city, Accra, and lawyer Asa Nkuma, one of Ghana's most foremost legal brains. Join us after the break to sort the wheat from the chaff so that we set the context for our chat tonight.
My name is Nathaniel Atto, and I'm host of Sports Today on the Joy Sports channel on Multi TV. It's exciting and it's action-packed as we bring you all the compelling sports stories here in Ghana and also internationally. Between 7 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., it's every putt, every medal, every punch, every trophy, every card, and every kick right here on Joy Sports on Multi TV. Whether it's on the pitch or in the ring or on the racetracks, you know you have every reason to join me. It's Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's all action-packed and it's all exciting. My name is Nathaniel Atto, and I have love for sport.
News is topical. It is the latest and most compelling of events. On Top Story, we bring you the top story, the day's leading news item in 15 minutes. It's sharp, focused, and it's live
every weekday at 5:30 p.m. on Joy News on Multi TV, on radio and online.
Top Story with Evans Mensah.
Top Story is brought to you in association with
Star Life Assurance, your financial anchor.
When the laws are made, unless it is tested, we never know what the consequences will be.
Society must have ideas, beliefs, values, regulations. Otherwise, society will be like the jungle.
We have all the beautifully written laws. We just don't apply them.
There are infractions and the system must take care of them.
People are likely to store their assets in a more reliable currency.
If the check begins to be a lame dog, or a sleeping dog. Naturally, the nation cannot develop.
The progress of the country is like a big bus that we are all pushing.
So we all rise or fall based on how well our leaders do.
The faster you run, the more you get lost.
Make a date with me, Stephen Anti, on PM Express every weeknight at 9 on the Joy News channel on Multi TV.
Get a Digibox now. Visit us on www.multitvworld.com or call 0302 211 68025 for a Multi-TV accredited dealer.
As you know, I have had occasion to speak publicly about the dangers of illegal small-scale mining over and over again, and the harm it is posing to our nation in terms of our forests being degraded, farmlands being destroyed, water bodies being polluted and poisoned, and the resultant implications for our people.
The local small-scale mining industry, also known as Galamsey, has been overrun by foreigners whose arrogance and disrespect has reached such dangerous levels that they kill Ghanaians with impunity. This is in the face of the clear and unambiguous law that Galamsey business is reserved for Ghanaians.
Many of our young people, have lost their lives in mining accidents in these illegal so-called Galamsey areas. In addition to this, there is now arising friction and conflict in which we're seeing people being murdered, gunned down, as a result of Galamsey activities. Some of our citizens have been killed. Foreigners also involved in this illegal activity have also lost their lives. And there are negative consequences of this activity, including lawlessness and criminal behavior.
In the wake of the as yet unexplained fires that have engulfed our markets and literally gutted the returns from the toils and sweat of thousands of fellow citizens, we have become embroiled in turf wars about the legality or otherwise of proposed reconstruction initiatives, when it would have been eminently better all round if preemptory actions had been taken to ensure that the occupation and use of the spaces were founded on sound and incontrovertible law. A law is passed to regulate the safe operations of motorbicycles on our roads, and on the day of passage, a government minister pronounces that not only should the law be defied, but that he will personally promote and support the act of defiance. Likewise, when laws are passed to protect the rights of children and other vulnerable groups from the cruelties and ravages of some of our cultural beliefs and norms, some of those in whom we have entrusted the leadership of our nation openly declare their opposition to and defiance of the laws. Incredibly, we often reward these saboteurs of enlightenment with higher accolades on the leadership ladder. Laws for the proper management of the movement of people and goods in our cities and towns have been on our statutes books for years, and indeed many of them older than Omangana herself. Yet, those that seek to enforce these laws and bring sanity and order are often derided by those acting illegally and sometimes undermined by both their political allies and foes. A good number of drivers who offend our traffic regulations immediately invoke the name of a big man, or worse still, actually call the said big man on phone to instruct the police to let them off. Is it any wonder that the police have become cynical and resorted to blatant subversion of the law through unashamed demand for bribes? Omangana has become a country that loves making laws and pontificating on law and order. We are even better at sidestepping the very laws that we pass and a firm belief and total commitment to. More often than not, just about everyone seeks to exempt themselves from the strictures of the law. They do this in several ways. 1. A blatant disregard of the law in the full knowledge that the law will not be enforced. 2. Veiled and unsettled threats of withdrawal of political support. 3. Protection from the patronage and acquiescent interest of political authority. 4. Resort to the use of illegal enforcers such as land guards and security personnel at large. The situation goes from irritating intolerance to absolute farce when the important deleterious effects of the disregard of our own laws turn into chaos and unintended consequences that lead to the tragedies from the unacceptable killings of Ghanaians by foreigners.
Check well. It's finished. It's finished. Hey. Oh, 15 rounds. Hey. 15 rounds.
And the human tragedies of the market fires. And what is the response of our rulers in such situations? Instead of doing the right and obvious thing of enforcing the applicable laws, the matter is shrouded in more darkness and obfuscation with the establishment of instant committees, which merely seek to cover up the underlying malfeasance and sleaze which put the spokes into the law in the first place.
We've therefore decided to constitute an interministerial task force on illegal mining. In constituting this interministerial task force, I am sending a clear signal to the offending individuals and groupings that government will not allow their activities to cause conflict, dislocation, environmental degradation, and unemployment.
It is time we let the order elements that complement the laws of our land to become manifest and effective for the public good of the people of Ghana, instead of private greed of those in whose name we have entrusted the mandate of governance.
Good evening. Law and disorder. Let me start off with you, Ace. Is the president right in talking about small-scale mining and illegalities? My sense of the law is that, yes, Ghanaians get the licenses, but does anything stop them from getting others involved?
Well, I would say that the problem in Ghana is not the lack of law. It is the lack of enforcement. Trust me. You want law on breeding of mosquitoes, we have it in Ghana. You want law on literally on how to use the Ghana flag, we have it in Ghana. The problem is with enforcement.
By this specific case of
the Minerals and Mining.
Yes.
The Minerals and Mining Act was passed, and in 2012, a slew of regulations were passed. Now this is what happens. You're right. Small-scale mining licenses can only be given to Ghanaians. But until last year, there was literally nothing stopping a Ghanaian from saying, I've brought in a Togolese to provide support services, which would actually mean, in reality, the non-Ghanaian doing the real work. Of course, the person would require a work permit, work permit, residence permit, etc., etc. One has to go to immigration. Last year, a specific law was passed to make sure that could not even go through immigration without going through the Minerals Commission. So you have to justify that you're a Ghanaian. You can actually hire a non-Ghanaian to work on your concession, etc., etc., and for Minerals Commission to agree before the person is given the permit to work here. But that law was just passed last year. I believe that maybe what the president is saying is that we are moving to the enforcement stage, where these laws are not just sitting beautifully on our statute books, but he intends to enforce these laws so that all these non-Ghanaians whom we are seeing illegally providing so-called support services to small-scale mines, and often, yes, the small-scale mining license holders are going to be dealt with or streamlined or deported for working without the proper purpose in Ghana.
But my research is showing that there are people from a particular place in China who have got maybe 20,000 people working here, and they have said they own the mines.
They don't own the mines. They probably paid some money to the small-scale license holder to sit in his house while they do the mine as support services. The reality might be that they probably think they own it, but they don't, because a transfer can only happen from a Ghanaian to a Ghanaian, and with the consent of the minister, which effectively is the Minerals Commission. And so they probably don't understand our laws. They are speaking amiss. You cannot own a license.
They've paid money. They take the gold. And in fact, I checked the records, and it's the Ghana Chamber of Mines actually saying that the Chinese are responsible for 40% of our gold production.
It is an unfortunate state of affairs in Ghana, and that's what we're discussing today.
Yeah.
The law exists, but the disorder exists at the same time with the law. It's an oxymoron. It's a terrible situation where the law exists, the law stops it, but everybody looks on and says, oh wow, 40%. what do we do about the reality? Somebody said to me that, hey, show me where in Ghana is testimony to 100 years of mining. Show me a mining town that can say that we can point to as testimony of 100 years of mining. But since Galamsey started, go to Konongo and see how well the boys are doing. So the argument is that the reality, the real politic, is overshadowing the law. And I like the president's move. We will see how that will come up against the reality of politics and the vote.
Mr. Mayor, if Accra had gold, you probably would have kept us all out of Accra. But the mining...
No, we will invite everybody in.
Good. But there's been some mining issues in Accra, sort of winning of sand, etc. I mean, how has the law, the municipal law, how has that worked in the face of the activities of those who want to win sand?
Well, there are bylaws which specify areas where you can win sand. And technical experts would have a survey of our beach fronts and which areas they would recommend for sand winning. That is the law. But of course, much of the sand winning is done illegally. It's done at night. It's done by young men who just looking for a way to make a living. So it does happen.
And is there any sort of enforcement by the city authorities? Do you go out with patrols at night too?
No, city authorities, so far as I'm concerned, so far as I know. And now, I've got to preface all this. You call me the mayor, former mayor, yes. But I left AMA...
Almost 10 years ago.
No, I left 14 years ago. That's a very long time. A lot of things have changed since then, okay? So I cannot hold brief for what's happening today. During my time, I wasn't aware that we sent out patrols at night. I don't believe that that is really the responsibility of the city. It's the police that has responsibility.
But you passed the bylaws?
These are bylaws. True, we passed bylaws, but we don't enforce it.
Let me bring you closer home to... Yesterday in the graphic, something struck me. It said 3 different authorities are claiming the right to redevelop the Kantamanto market. And when I was looking at this subject, one of the things that also struck me was there are about 80 odd markets in Accra. Fewer than a dozen of them have got an imprimatur of the metro or sub-metro authorities.
Technically, according to our bylaws, AMA is the only statutory body that can establish and run a market in the city. Okay. But this law was written over 100 years ago, okay? Our oldest market, Osu Market, is about 140 years old. So these laws go way back. Accra has outgrown these laws, and the very definition of a market now comes into question. Is a mall at Tetequashi a market? Of course, a market is a congregation of people who are selling things to the public and who are inviting people to come there and sell. So it's not much different from Makola, except that it's cleaner, it's better regulated.
But these 80 markets I'm talking about are the
neighborhood
the
markets.
Informal markets.
Neighborhood market.
And
some AMA is the only body that can set up a Makola, there's a supermarket that can set up an Adabraka. Now, there are small markets which occur in communities where open spaces and people move onto it and they start selling. And it's convenient because it serves the community. And if this is what they are calling part of the 80, then sure.
Kantamanto is not a small market.
Now, Kantamanto you're talking about is a special case. One, the land,
timber market, for example.
The land has been leased. The land is supposed to belong to the railways. Now, whether they own it or it's just part of their lease estate, I don't know. But that's not unusual, because when a space is open in Accra, people squat on it and they start selling things. Before you realize it, it's developed into a market, okay? So if these three authorities, bodies are struggling, fighting about this, it could very well be that one, you have the railways that claim that this land is ours. If there is a problem there, it's up to us to set it right. You have the city, which says that we are the ones who set up markets. So if a market needs to come here, it's ours to do. Then you have, I mean, who is the third authority? The Market Association.
Yeah, that's right.
The Market Association, who are also claiming.
And I believe even a gas tool, all the gas tools.
So there will be, this is something for the courts to decide. And I think the courts is the right place to decide it.
Let me ask a cynical question. Was the AMA collecting, what do they call it? Tolls at the Kantamanto market?
Yes, AMA was collecting tolls.
Knowing that they hadn't set it up?
The law, AMA, the way AMA works is, so long as you are transacting business in the city, you owe tolls to the city. Okay. So we collect tolls. Whether you have the right to do it there or not is another story.
Okay.
But the tolls must be collected because we need the tolls to maintain these places.
The situation here is very interesting. Yeah. Because if you have one piece of land, many interests can exist in the same piece of land. And that's probably what we're seeing.
Yes.
There's the owner of the land who may own what is called the allodium. There may be somebody who owns the use of the land called the usufruct. Yeah. He may then give a lease to someone who then becomes a tenant and pays rent. And someone might have a license, which is the right to enter and leave the land. AMA might have the power to license or to give permission for a market to be established. So the market person has a license to be on the land or may have a lease. The market association may have a lease. The railways might have the usufruct. And all these interests are stratified and protected by law.
Okay, I'm not sure whether you know the specific law, but I'll ask you anyway. Did the railway have the right to go and sign a lease with the market?
Well, the question is this. Do they own the land? If they do, they have the right to do anything they want to do with it, except if it was compulsorily acquired and it is going to be used for a purpose other than which it is set up.
I believe it was leased to them by government for the purposes of running the railway.
Well, then the question is what are the terms of the lease agreement, not really the law, the lease agreement between the railways and the government? Is that did the lease agreement say that this can only be used for railways? Or is maintaining a market close to a railway line a use that is necessary and incidental to the running of a railway?
Because to go back to one of the issues that Nat raised, in fact, the third one happens to be the government, which is now saying that it wants...
government meaning AMA or
no,
the
government meaning
government.
Central government, which is now saying that it wants the land back, to put it back to its original use because of the urban transportation.
This can be resolved in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Take a look at the papers. What do the papers say? But we enjoy in making the simplest things most complicated, because if it's not complicated, people won't get to eat. People won't get to chop. It's as simple as that. So, but just take a look at the documents. Does the government really have a claim? Did the government acquire the land? Did the government cede the land to the railways? Then guess what? The government itself might not even have a right. It depends on what's written in the papers. This can be resolved in 5 minutes, trust me.
But the Ghana Railway is owned 100% by the government.
It doesn't matter.
And it is saying that
it is a separate and distinct entity. The government acquired, if the government acquired the land and gave it to railways, the government just cannot walk in one day and say...
So is it wrong for the Minister of Transport to say that they're going to take over the land?
It depends on the papers that exist between the Ghana government, as government, co-government, and Ghana Railways Corporation.
Charlie, don't assume that government owns it. When I went to AMA, one of the big problems that I encountered was Makola had burnt down.
That's right.
A year or two previously. And the then President Rawlings had promised that the city, AMA, would rebuild the market. So a company had been set up consisting of AMA and SNIT to rebuild the market. And when I went on board, the construction had started and continuing. My first board meeting, SSNIT asked for shares
in the market.
Okay. I understood from my director that AMA's share in the market, in the new market, was the land. It was going to be an equity share. So we were to tend the land title over to the company. Reasonable. So I said, okay, next time we come to a meeting, we'll bring the land title. The next time, when we left, my director told me, Mr. Mayor, I'm terribly sorry, but we don't have a title to the land. Makola has been written as AMA property for the last 100 years since it was established as a market. It's always been assumed to belong to the city. When time came to
renew the lease,
really, we didn't have it. We didn't own it. We had to go and apply to Lands Commission to be awarded the lease to the land.
Okay.
And to make the story even more interesting, I said, wait a minute, if we don't own Makola, which is historically is known as our property, what do we own? It turned out we did not own the residence where I lived. We didn't own the land. We did not own the office where we were located.
There you are.
We had to go
and do it all again.
And do it all over again. Okay? So, this is quite a fascinating question. Who owns what?
What land?
When the town and country planning shows you their map of the city, they designate certain areas AMA land, city land. The property where Novotel is located for years was designated as AMA property. At the same time, Governance Boys School also claimed part of that land because that's where they had their carpentry workshop and their gardens. And these claims coexisted quite happily. As Ace said, there are many different levels of ownership.
Ace.
Until something happens, and you have to provide the paper.
Ace,
for the law.
You are, from your legal perspective, what really are the chances of the traders? Because really, in all of this, one needs to look at their interests. They've lost a lot of assets. They've lost a lot of personal property.
If it turns out that Ghana Railways indeed has title, and if it turns out that Ghana Railways has given a long lease to the association and given the association the power to parcel out portions as licenses to the traders might have the most superior right to everyone else.
But are they right in saying that they want to build the things themselves?
No.
But let's watch it. Look, who owns the land is the first question. Who has given what right to be on the land? Now that, as the former mayor is saying, the market essentially evolved.
Yes, right.
Now there's going to be a specific attempt to build a market. At that point in time, they have to go to AMA and get AMA's permission to build the place as a market. So the AMA may, and all of this, like I said, is based on the papers, may not have technical ownership. As he said, they found out that they didn't really own the land Makola was on, but they had been regulating it for a long time. So it is important to hit the papers. But what I'm saying is that if the papers indeed show that Ghana Railways owns it, and indeed Ghana Railways gave a long lease, and that lease has been parceled out, then those licenses may exist. But the question is that are you going to be allowed to set up the market? AMA might say we won't approve of it, or we will approve of it. So AMA's role might be an approval role. If they don't have
a very important role.
Yeah. Critical.
A critical role.
If they say they won't agree, the airline that is essentially set up Accra will say you can't establish a market except with their permission. But the reality, as he said, is that a lot of the markets end up evolving, so they kind of have an some factual stamp by AMA through the collection of the tools, etc., etc. So this is going to be a very interesting case. AMA can actually stop that market from being built. You can build it, but you can't operate a market from there. Well, to the extent that AMA can enforce it.
So you think that the traders have some hope?
As I said, may, depending on the state of the papers. We all don't know the state of the documents. And that's what we need to be looking at. And this thing doesn't have to take a month. Everybody should bring their papers. Appoint an independent umpire. He looks through it, says, you own that, you don't own this, you own this, you don't own that. The matter is ended. This can be resolved.
One of the things I find surprising in all of this is what seems to be emerging as a fairly hard line of government in this matter, in its attitude to the traders. Because over the years, government has actually suspended the application of bylaws for political reasons. And
that's not entirely correct. They have not suspended application of bylaws. They may have touched certain bylaws, but to say they suspended bylaws is too Catholic a statement.
Well, I didn't say every bylaw. I said
it sounded like you were.
I said it started. Let me read what you said when you were mayor. Decongesting Accra is a politically toxic thing to do and will remain an albatross on the neck of government until politicians muster the necessary will to take difficult decisions and decongest the city. The nation's capital will remain a national mess. You face the problem. Your successors have all faced the problem of decongestion from both political parties. Our brother Ajiri faced the problem. The current mayor started an exercise and was stopped by our late president. The people in Kumasi said that the party that lost that election because of decongestion. Now, clearly, it seems to me that there is some relationship between, if you like, the political sensitivity to quote unquote listen to the people and the inability to decongest. That's why I'm saying that here it seems to be a little out of the way that government seems to be pushing a hard line. And if I may also be cynical, for example, hawkers don't pay tolls. And that may also be why they become targets.
But they vote.
But they do vote.
Okay, let me defend the metropolitan authorities a bit. Look,
I'm not attacking them. I'm just saying that.
I'm not saying you are.
All I'm saying is that, you know,
putting a word for them.
Yeah.
You have technocrats, experts, put in there to do the work. They look at Accra. They've drawn the plan for decongest. They look at Korle and say, wow, we can turn this into a little Amsterdam. We can desilt it, make the water, cure the waters, and put boats on it to ferry people from South Accra to North Accra.
That seems a little frivolous, but the reality is that...
It's a reality. And we got money for it.
The waterway also flushes out the city.
No, I'm just giving you an example.
So I will prefer that as an example than Little Amsterdam. Because no one can take this discussion seriously if we are going to throw everybody out just to create a Little Amsterdam.
Good.
Right.
So, but
it is part of the sanitation management of the city.
One of the key things is to then deal with what is now known as Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes.
Old Fadama.
Well, the people, the usual term, Old Fadama for the planners, for us ordinary people, Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, what then happens? And this is the time, it's gone through various governments.
Yes.
One government minister looked at it and said, if we send them away, we will lose our constituency in the next election, if we attempt to. And some people say, we don't want people near us. So we have a situation where we took money to do this, we took loans, which I presume we are still paying, and nothing happened. We've been frozen by the politics. You see, the law exists in the statute books in black and white, but it's got to walk off that paper to have effect. Now that work is hampered by politics, by lack of money, by economic factors, by social factors. If we don't deal with those, the laws will remain very beautiful laws in our statute books, but will not be worth the paper they are written on. So the poor city mayor gets hit all the time. You can't do this, you can't do that. But he's got a boss. And if the boss says, allow the drivers to park on the street.
So why go through the exercise?
This is Ghana. We bumble and stumble along until we find
For
something we can
example,
call
you know,
light.
when my senior brother left office, in 2011, long after he left, the AMA passed 77 bylaws to deal with decongestion. In the face of all these years.
I have an interesting anecdote concerning AMA bylaws,
Yes,
etc.
decongestion.
I read a newspaper editorial in the Chronicle criticizing the city authorities for not providing Accra with proper drainage and complaining that how can that every time it rains, the city floods. If those who have been put in charge cannot do their job, then they should get out of the way. That editorial was written in 1895 by the Gold Coast Chronicle. So, you see?
And in 2013.
In 2013.
Same thing is happening. Yes. No,
okay. Now, I'm not excusing it. I'm just telling you that.
You see, actually, what I'm doing is, I'm actually defending the city authorities. What I'm saying is that, is there a disconnect between the desire, you know, of the mayor of Accra, who wants to plan and regulate their city, who's built markets, Kaneshi, etc., for which people are paying tolls, and others are just walking around making money without paying. And then gets a game plan going, and suddenly the political master just whips the carpet from underneath them.
Yes.
And it's happening too often.
There is indeed a disconnect.
There is a disconnect, no doubt about that. Accra is not a city-state. Accra is part of a political organism. And these are all connected. Accra mayor has his own agenda regarding the running of the city, and the government has an agenda also. A wonderful idea is when the two merge together, but sometimes they don't.
But isn't it debilitating that the mayor starts to do what he or she thinks is the right thing, and then somebody comes along and says,
we're not running a federal government.
No.
Yeah, it's a unitary state.
So
you ultimately have a boss. But you have a point. Now everybody speaks about Lagos State, federal. But Lagos State then got a governor who was prepared to work. And it is not the Lagos State that we all used to know. Everybody's talking about Rwanda because he got a president who said, I want to think out of the box. I want to do stuff. Can we get there? I think that, and that's the point I'm making, that we have the laws. It is making the laws work that is a problem. This program would have achieved nothing if we don't address how we're going to make sure that those laws work. For example, we're talking about the Chinese and Galamsey and everything. The laws to prevent what is going on exist. How are they working in Ghana without the work permits? Do we really need an interministerial committee, or we need Ghana immigration going in there, putting them in buses and putting them on the next flight back to Beijing? That is what we should be talking about.
No. But we need to iron out and tease out the disconnect, because
well,
if you just
I'll tell you one disconnect in Accra.
Yeah.
The boss of the mayor is not popularly elected.
No.
The boss is nominated by the president and then is approved by the assembly. The mayor's loyalty is not to the city.
No.
It's loyalty to his boss. Okay.
Because he's the president's man in the city.
He's the little president.
Yes.
So you can always get, he always has to keep one antenna out for the vibrations from the big house. If we are going to do what Ace is saying, then first of all, you got to change the law so that the mayor is responsible to the people of the city. He will have to come back every 4 years and justify his stewardship for the city. But so long as he doesn't have to come back and do that, he will simply keep looking at the castle.
So why does he bother to even go through it?
Why does he?
Bother to try to decongest.
because it's part of his mandate. But he understands fully well that
at some point to be stopped.
At certain points, things will happen. And that's politics. You have to learn to go around it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way we've set it up. And I suppose the whole point of this discussion here is, do we have to go through that?
That's right. But we will get to the AC's point about... You see, let me give you an example of a place like Rwanda. If you go to Rwanda, they've got a very sophisticated, intricate Okada system running, in which absolutely everybody who is involved obeys the laws, wears the helmets, they have security checks on all of them, etc., etc., etc. Come to our situation, and a law is passed, and the first thing a regional minister says is that this is useless, we're going to not enforce it.
Can I ask a question? And he remained minister after he uttered those words?
Absolutely.
That is the problem we have.
Absolutely.
There, right there is the problem. If
the minister who criticized Ajiri Blankson and pulled him back from implementing these conditions still remained the minister.
And let me tell you exactly what that minister said. There are many laws sitting in statute books which are not being implemented, and that the law banning Okada riding should be added to them. This was what the particular minister said at the time.
And he remained minister?
Not only did he remain minister, I believe he's become even a bigger minister.
Well, but right there, like I said, we've identified what the problem is. Look, we've all traveled and driven in other countries. Why do you not go beyond the speed limit when you are driving on the I-95 in the US? Because you know
the law will catch you.
The next car might be the policeman. In Ghana, in my years of driving, I have seen 2 speed guns. One between Mankesim and Cape Coast, and the other one between Cape Coast and Takoradi. And they hide in the corner so they can get out and, hey, we've caught you.
They haven't been calibrated for about 30 years. I
well,
can tell you that
and guess what? Because they are the only 2. Before you get there, the drivers come in, will blink twice to tell you they are two towns away. That is how laughable the attempts are. Yeah. But and that is why I say that early days yet, but I'm beginning to like this IGP. He's put the police out there. You know that when you are getting to a traffic light, there will be, apart from red, yellow, and green, there will be red and blue flashing. I think that I'm beginning to see a fair bit of discipline around there, although sometimes the police just stand there and allow the motorbike riders to ride through the red lights as if red lights do not apply to motorbike riders. But bit by bit, we will get there. I think that, but it's going to cost us money, political will. We're going to have to take a decision that we're going to do it. But the politicians are always going to be afraid because of the vote. Look, the last days of the NPP, they started implementing traffic laws, arrested bad drivers, threw them in jail, and released them just in between the 2 elections because they were losing the election. But
is it just politicians? Because let me take another, we'll spend the last 10 minutes talking about what can we do, but it's not just politicians. For example, our law on children. We have several laws on children. Yeah. We're the first country to ratify the convention, etc. We have all those things about when somebody reaches the age of marriage. And yet, as we speak today, people are being betrothed.
Because the law hasn't walked from the pages of the law books into the lives of the people. And that journey involves money, politics, economics, social factors.
They've been there for 20 years or more.
Can I point out more to you?
For example, told you something from 1895.
Yes, I know.
Beggars. You know, it's illegal to beg unless you are under the age of 17 and unless it's for a religious purpose. We've had all of these laws sitting there. The question is moving the law from where it is into the lives of the people. If you sit in Accra and pass a beautiful Children's Act based on the Convention of the Rights of the Child, you have ratified somewhere else in the world.
But there are people who are making careers with, institutionalized people who are making careers trying to implement, these things.
NGOs?
NGOs, the Children's Commission, etc., etc.
With what funding? We've had the beautiful intestate succession law in there for how many years, and how many widows are still not being deprived of properties because we have to enforce the law. The politicians will not enforce it. Trust me, you and I, if we didn't have laws, we'll break the law all the time. Really, if you get to a traffic light at 12 midnight, will you stop? You will drive through.
No,
right? But we need the law implemented.
Does it need a politician to
you
stop children being given away at the age of 12,
The reason you elect executive is to make sure that they execute the law. Look, the human being, short of all social constraints, will be a beast.
So what are we doing to make sure that the executive execute the law?
By having a program like this.
We have elected the executive. We've put them there. We've put the executive there. Mr. Mayor, I mean, when you were mayor, I think it was maybe, I don't know, the issues of the Kayayo and those...
We're just starting.
We're just starting.
The Kayayo really became a phenomenon in the mid-90s after the disturbances in the north, Kokumba, Namumba, whatever.
The drift,
That drifted, a lot of people came. So it was just starting.
And it became a big, huge thing for the city.
It is a huge thing now. At that time, it wasn't that big, but I mean, in retrospect, it's obvious what was going to happen.
What's going to happen?
Sure.
But then people promised politically to build hostels for
and they were not voted for, so it might have been a repudiation of the promise to build hostels for Kaye.
But you're raising issues. You're raising issues of funding. You know,
I don't believe it's so much the funding as the political will. It's one of them.
Let's look at.
There must be a cultural, social convention.
Yeah,
a convention that this is what we want to do.
But see, time and time again, you get people. You know, it's not just the minister we spoke about. There's a very famous case, and I remember because it's remained with me when the Trokosi law was passed.
Sure.
And a very important member of governance said, I will not obey this.
Well, he said it, and then what happened? Did he really take steps to disobey it? And if he did, was he arrested and thrown in jail?
No, but you are talking about leadership. You're talking about leadership. Well, and if somebody signals that...
Well, what do you do? Then the people who believe...
And not only that, like the minister, he went on to higher things.
Well, then it would appear as if we reward those who declare non-allegiance to the law of Ghana, although they swear an oath when they become a minister. So it tosses the hot coal back into the lap of the president. The politics of it. That, Mr. President, when your minister said he would defy the law, what did you do? In many countries, he wouldn't last 1 minute after that statement.
He will have to resign.
He will be forced to resign. In fact, what I hear in some of those countries is that when you're appointed as minister, you sign your resignation letter and give it to the president. The day he wants to fire you, he dates it and releases it. So often you are resigned before you find out. But not here. The minister is probably more powerful than his boss because of the votes he delivers from 10 constituencies.
But, so should we throw our hands up in there?
It is for you and I. It's for the ordinary Ghanaians.
Civil society?
Civil society who want to make a change. Let me tell you something about politicians. You've been one. Look, when you stare long at a politician, he blinks. He will blink first. But we are not prepared to put our heads out there for that kind of work. If we demand that it should be done, they will do it. But often we folded our arms and are benefiting from the illegality. And so we are all to blame. The politician, civil society, the ordinary Ghanaian, all of us who are breaking the law, and all of us who are not complying with the law. We are to blame, right from the least to the greatest. And unless there's a complete social change of mind, which is what he's talking about, we are not going anywhere. We'll continue to bumble around.
In our constitution, we have a body called National Council for Civic Education.
And what is their budget?
It's a question. You see, we keep talking about budgets. We are in a country that in the last year overspent its budget by almost $5 billion United States dollars and has consistently done so. So I don't think that the issue of money, not as a budget, but listen, I don't think the issue is not having the money. The issue
I agree with you.
It is a willingness, in my view, to deploy those resources.
The political will
that political will that the ex-mayor is talking about.
You know, but I'm just saying that even if the NCC is a constitutional body, you cannot write it off. But the point I'm trying to make is that the issues you're talking about, civil society, and I would have thought, and you know, we had a similar discussion last week. I would have thought that these are the things that the civic education.
Do we still teach civics in our school?
No, we don't. You and I about civics and current affairs. So if we why do we have a civic education constitutional body and we don't teach civics? What is it doing? The only thing I see it doing is election time, you come and say this is how you vote. But those people, whether they have money, they are being paid a salary every day and have done so since 1992. Can we ask them what they're doing?
I won't discount that. I believe it's part of the things that we have to do. We have to look at the NCC and its role, but it goes way beyond there. We have to identify all the various levels and who is supposed to do what to make sure that this nation works. Right now, it's not working, and that's
Mr. Mayor,
what we are talking.
Yes, sir.
What was your relationship with your boss?
Which of
your
them?
political boss? You were
yes.
by the Constitution. You are the
handmaiden of the
handmaiden of the political boss.
Oh, and then kind of under local government, not really under local government, evolution.
No, because the MMs, whatever they call them, are the president's representatives on the ground. That's direct.
Technically, but then obviously you have the Minister of Local Government, you have the regional minister. So there are tiers between.
So what were the relationships between the various, the minister, the bosses?
Oh, the president was the chief of CEO of the nation. So you have a certain.
Did you run into difficulties?
Sometimes you report to him. Sometimes, very rarely, because there is an hierarchy that must be maintained. If I have anything, I go through a regional minister, and then it goes to a minister of local government, and then it goes to him, unless he has reason to circumvent them and talk to me.
Let
directly.
me rephrase the question like some lawyers are doing.
Yeah.
What led you to the statement you made?
At that time?
Yeah, at that time.
It's on the face of the pink sheet.
It doesn't take brain surgery to make that comment.
No, but
I mean, it's quite obvious that when you are running a city and you are trying to do the congestion and you are being restricted, it's quite obvious why. So when you get a smart journalist to come and talk to you and you want to be honest with the journalist, you tell him, well, look, the reason why these things have not been done is because our political bosses lack the political will to go through to the end. That's all.
So why don't our political bosses say that let's change the law because we need the votes?
Well, you can ask them that.
Well, I don't
no
understand.
politician would answer that in the affirmative.
What I'm saying is that, especially when it comes to things like decongestion and the Children's Act and all of that, the implementation always gets blocked.
Let's take that. There's too much. Look, let me tell you what my view is. Yeah. Ghana's presidency is a super president.
Yes.
The president
it's an elected dictatorship.
Way too much power.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yes, yes. It was a reflection of things that were. Things that were. I think that if the mayor is to have power, we need to set our constitutional structure in such a way that there are certain matters in which the mayor is his own boss.
But you see, let me tell you, because you alluded to me being a politician once. Let me tell you what happened.
Tell me.
The reality is that when one dispensation is in power, the other dispensation says we must elect mayors.
Sure.
When it swaps around, it's no, because the power to appoint and give instructions directly.
It's an immense power.
Absolutely, and those who said, oh, we should elect mayors when they were in opposition, suddenly find reason why it shouldn't happen.
It happens all the time.
All the time. It's happening all the time.
And so that explains why we are in the mess. And the people who ought to speak are the ordinary Joes and Josephines who ought to say, we are tired of
Kofi
this.
and Nama.
Well, some names have been here for a long time.
Okay.
And have become part of our names. you have some, Tanya. You have some, Charles.
Eves. Even better.
I have West. Ace.
So which are about to presidents, right?
You see, you're right. We need to begin to speak about this and begin to hold the president personally responsible. For the president to say, well, this is a bit too much for me. I want to cede some of these powers so I can exercise, I can have more space to do other things that we have to do. We need to start looking at the powers of the presidency. They are way too immense. We need to let the mayors have some power. I'm not too sure whether voting in itself is the be all and end all of it. But the powers that the mayors have ought to be greatly enhanced if they are going to be real agents of change in the districts, the municipalities, and the metropolitan areas.
You see, I'll share your view, but one of the problems I have is that we've been through an extensive and expensive constitutional review process. And for my money, all that came out were banalities. The issues that we are trying to discuss here in terms of the restructuring of the powers of the rulers and the ruled. I did not see any of it in any of these discussions.
It's not going to happen without a fight. I'm not talking about war. I'm talking about there has to be a long, protracted debate to force these things to happen. Change, evolution works, but change comes when we are prepared to fight for it.
So it looks like a plague on both your houses. It doesn't matter the label they wear. The politicians like to hold on to the power.
That is true. They do.
But if they want to hold on to the power, how do you square holding on to the power with the pretense that you want an ordered society?
Because we all like to go to heaven when we die.
But we don't want to die.
So we try to make it as palatable as possible. Okay?
Well, so the bottom line...
But, as Ace has said, the reason that the three of us are sitting here is to send a message. After all, when you started this program, you started a program with the president talking about setting up this committee. Talking about it, okay? So, you are asking, we are asking him, or you are asking him that, do we need another committee? Are there other things which are fundamentally more important to be examined? All right? So, it's a beginning.
But one of the things we haven't talked about, you see, we always bring these things back because it's also the character of the society. You know, every Ghanaian wants to find a way of sidestepping the law if they can't to get their way.
I'm not sure about every Ghanaian. I think that...
in almost every situation, you find that this is happening.
No, but really, as I keep saying, if you get to the traffic light at 12 midnight and there's nobody there, no other car parked, you will drive through. Why is that in some countries they have something they call the four-way stop?
Yes.
Where if you get to the four-way, whether you will stop.
Enforcement.
And the first person to get to the line is the first person to leave. Because there's enforcement. That is the bottom line.
Have you seen Kankudek Junction?
Forget it. When the lights go off, then you see who we really are.
Yes, but what I'm trying to make.
And get
aren't we reflect? Isn't the politician reflecting the people that we are?
I'm saying that the best image of it is that sometimes when the traffic light is off, then a person we consider normally as deranged or a lunatic will be directing the traffic, and you and I will be told when to move.
Aren't you agree with my absolute point that we get the leadership we get because of the people that we are?
I agree.
Yes.
Yes. We are adding them. Let's end the show.
Absolutely. So here we are.
Have we resolved anything today?
No, we haven't resolved anything. But the object of the programs I'm doing is essentially to take issues and highlight why there are bottlenecks and why we need to make sure that we begin to find ways to think outside of the box. You know, we have these platitudes where things come, speeches are made, and then nothing happens. But I think that, as you say, if we want to start to get things moving, then the issues are, do you just make the law? What are the underlying factors? What are the issues? What is the political underplay? What are the realities? But unless we begin to dissect these kind of underlying influences, then we're going to just sit there, politicians who say, oh, we'll do A, B, and C, you know, because I will still end the show by saying, is there any illegality going on in the context of the small-scale mining? If somebody is given a concession and he invites a Chinese person in, and a Chinese person brings their machine and it gets all that stuff done, and the Ghanaian is getting their money, is that illegal?
Straight out illegality. Straight out illegality.
What's the illegality?
If they've not gone through the process of the Chinese person stay in Ghana and work being approved by the Minerals Commission and Immigration Service, it is an illegality. Good. If they've gone through that, it is not an illegality.
Yes. So we establish the illegal and the legal.
But even if they've gone through that, then we can ask questions of the Minerals Commission and Immigration Service. Why did you give those permits? Is it in the interest of Ghanaians that you give those permits? So there's the illegality bit, and then there's still the political bit.
You see, because one of the things that I want to end on is the fact that we have assumed that every Chinese here is illegal. But I don't think that is true.
I agree.
Thank you very much, my senior brother, former mayor, Ace. Thank you very much for joining us on Tarzan's Take tonight.
Thank you.
It's been interesting, and I think that my very provocative opening words have maybe been reinforced and in many ways maybe supported by my two guests. What we need to do as a society is to actually begin to hold our leaders to account. And if we start holding our leaders to account, the laws that are passed should also reflect the realities of the culture in which we operate. And when we pass them, we must ensure that these laws are enforced. You've been watching Tarzan's Take. If you enjoyed it, thank you very much. We'll be back next week.